Hello, it's Diane McNaughton here. In this video I'm going to show you how I use masking tape to mask off certain areas in my paintings. I'm doing a bit of sketching outdoors when the snowdrops are out in our local forest area, and here is my little palette that I use when I'm out sketching. I'm only halfway through my sketch here, but so enjoying it. And these are a couple of sketches I did in the forest. I can use these as a reference for paintings, which I love because I can sit there and I remember what it felt like to be there. And then I did another little sketch here with the snowdrops in my garden, just a close-up to get a feel of their shape. So I've created a drawing from both my sketches, and I'm going to create a painting out of this, but for the purposes of this demo I'm just going to use the bottom portion. I'm going to use this portion here so that I can show you the technique of using masking tape to mask off certain areas in your paintings. And for that purpose I've created a little tracing here of my shapes, so I can use these shapes for the masking tape. I'm going to be using three colours, just French Ultramarine, Aureolin and Lunar black. Now I don't really often use black, but this is made by Daniel Smith and it's a granulating colour, and it's great to use when you can just splash on the paint and see what happens. I'm going to be using my Vinci Squirrel mops, number 1 and 3, and I've got some masking tape here which is quite broad, so it gives us enough scope to create some shapes. And I've got my craft knife and this lovely cutting mat which is purchased recently, which is really useful. So we're going to create some lovely little snowdrop shapes in the masking tape. The masking tape to use on your lovely white watercolor paper, you need to actually fluff it up. So if you take a bit of fleece or your clothing and you do this on your clothing, do it a few times, pull up the fluff and then put it down on your cutting board or board that you want to use. Take my tracing paper with my shapes. I'll just draw the one shape to start with, like that. And you'll see it creates a little mark there on the tracing paper. Take your craft knife and hold it in the direction you want it to cut, and come around. Hold on to the craft knife. That's right. Just it's a little bit laborious, but if you get all your little drawings on your tape and then put on some nice music, and you can create the shapes as such. I've now cut all my shapes and I'm just lifting off the excess tape to reveal the shapes. My pieces are now ready to go onto my paper. I'll lift them up with my craft knife. They come off easily and I can place them on my paper. Because I fluffed up the tape, it won't tear the paper. So I'm going to just start off with using a little bit of Aureolin. The paper is dry and I can just flood it across with a really juicy wash of Aureolin, and then the French Ultramarine and a little bit of the black, the Lunar black. Now I haven't used much of this Lunar black before, so this is a bit of an experiment for me, but I'm really quite enjoying playing around with it. I'm going to make sure I'm lifting the board up a little bit so that the wash actually runs down a bit, so that the colors can mix on the paper but create a slightly diagonal direction where the paint is going to flow. I'm going to keep adding quite juicy paint. I actually squeezed out some wet paint onto my plate so that the paint will be quite sort of strong. But because I'm using a lot of water and I'm letting it drip off, of course, you can lose the vibrancy. So I keep adding more paint as I go. Now it looks really strong, but it will dry much paler, as you know. Now there's some little flower shapes on the right hand side. I want them to look slightly less defined and a little bit further away, so I'm just creating some sort of shapes using negative painting. I'm trying to make sure that the whole painting stays wet before I take the tape off, so I'm going to keep adding juicy bits of paint here and there and lifting the board and letting it flow. Really liking what's happening here, and it's just it's doing its own thing, the paint. This is what I love about watercolor, allowing it to create some interesting marks, and it's not something that I can actually manufacture myself. I just have to let it do its thing. I can see a seascape here with rocks and water. This would be a great way of painting that kind of subject. So there are many possibilities using this technique. Going to do a little bit of splattering with my palette knife, taking up some of that French ultramarine, and then I think it's time to actually lift some of that masking tape with my, I just lift it carefully with the craft knife. I'm not digging into the paper, and it peels off so beautifully. I'm starting it off with a palette knife so I don't put my finger into the wet paint, which is not so easy. There we go, I've removed all my masking tape, and as you can see it's all very hard edged, which I don't want. That's why I have done this quickly, so the wash is still very wet and I can soften edges here and there, and I let the paint just flow onto the shapes. Sometimes I'm adding a little bit of Aureolin to it to warm it up because it's quite a cool color coming over the petals, and somehow the shape is kept. It's strange. I like what's happening. So it's kind of lost and found edges, and it's really exciting. Just let it happen. If there's too much black come over, I add a little bit of yellow. Painting still wet on the right hand side, so I'm going to just add a little bit of color to integrate both sides and let it run a little bit. It was a little bit pale. It needs some sort of interest there. Ooh, that's interesting what's happened there. I think I'll do a little bit of splatter with my palette knife and my brush. They do slightly different splatters, so, and I'm taking a little bit of French ultramarine and it adds to the painting. I love splattering. The painting's now dry. I've let it dry and I'm just adding a little bit more blue to that top area. And then I've actually drawn in some petal shapes just here and there, as you can see, and I'm just creating with negative painting a few of the shapes. I don't want to destroy my looseness, so I'm just going to do a little bit of a suggestion here and there of the petals. Of course, you know, you could actually create some lovely stalks and leaves as well using negative painting in that wash. Feel free to make it as realistic as you like, or leave it as abstract as you like. Just about finished. I think I will leave it there. I do hope you've enjoyed watching this, how to use masking tape to mask off larger areas in your paintings and then to be really free with the background area. There are so many possibilities.